I used to think the Northwest Territories were just empty, cold and empty and nothing else. That's what people say when they've never been there. I went once in 2019 doing field research for a geology survey near Nahanni Valley. I wasn't supposed to go into the valley itself. That wasn't part of the assignment. We stayed at a research station about 40 kilometers from the valley entrance. There were 6 of us. The work was routine: soil samples, topography mapping, water testing. We'd been there 2 weeks when I found the first photograph. It was in a filing cabinet in the equipment room, black and white, dated 1967. 2 men standing beside a canoe, mountains in the background. Someone had written on the back in pencil Willie and Frank before. That was all. I asked our site coordinator about it that night. His name was Robert, mid-50s, Dean from Fort Simpson. He'd been working these contracts for 20 years. When I showed him the photo, he looked at it for a long time. "You shouldn't have that," he said. Then he put it back in a cabinet and told me to leave it there. I asked why. He said the valley had a way of keeping things, that people go in and the valley keeps them. I thought he was messing with me, the way locals do with Southerners. But he wasn't smiling. The weird part started 3 days later. I was doing readings near a creek about 2 kilometers from camp. It was early afternoon, good weather, clear sight lines in every direction. The equipment was functioning normally, temperature steady around 12 degrees. I was logging mineral content readings when I heard something moving in the brush across the water. Not animal movement, rhythmic, deliberate, like someone walking through dense undergrowth at a measured pace. I called out, asked if anyone was there. The movement stopped immediately. I went back to work. Figured it was one of the other researchers, maybe checking adjacent sites, but we were supposed to radio before entering someone else's work area. Protocol. I checked my radio, nothing. About 10 minutes later, I heard it again, closer this time. Maybe 30 meters away. I could see the bushes moving, branches swaying, but I couldn't see what was moving them. I stood up and watched for maybe 30 seconds. The movement stopped the moment I looked directly at it. That happened 4 more times over the next hour, always just outside my direct line of sight, always stopping when I turned my head. The pattern was too consistent, too deliberate. Animals don't follow surveyors for an hour. They run or they ignore you. They don't pace. I packed my equipment early, walked back to camp, didn't mention it to anyone except Robert that night. He asked where exactly I'd been working. I showed him on the map. His finger traced the creek line, stopped at a specific point. "That's near Headless Creek," he said. I asked what that meant. He said the area had problems, that people reported things, movement without source, sounds that didn't match anything local. He said it casually, like he was talking about bad cell reception. I asked what kind of things. He looked at me for a moment, then shrugged. "People hear footsteps, see shapes. Nothing that makes sense when you try to explain it later." He paused. "Don't go back there." I asked why not. He didn't answer, just said the readings from that sector weren't critical to the survey. That I should work the northern grid instead. I agreed, seemed reasonable. I went back the next day anyway. I'm not sure why. Curiosity, stubbornness, the need to prove something wasn't there. Whatever the reason, I was back at the same creek by 10 in the morning. The movement started again around noon. Same pattern, but this time I could hear something else underneath it. A low sound, not quite humming, not quite breathing. It reminded me of the noise old freezers make, that mechanical pulse. Except it wasn't mechanical. It had variation, rhythm that was almost organic. I decided to cross the creek and look. The water was shallow, maybe knee-deep, cold, fast moving. I got halfway across and the sound stopped completely. Not fading, just cut off, like someone had unplugged something. I stood there in the water and realized how quiet everything had become. No birds, no insects, no wind. Just water moving around my legs and my own breathing, the kind of silence that feels deliberate. Pressed down from above, I looked up and saw something in the tree line, not a shape exactly. More like the space between trees was wrong, too dark, too concentrated. Shadow doesn't usually have depth. This had depth, like looking into a hole instead of at a surface. I stared at it and the darkness didn't move, but I had the overwhelming sense that it was looking back at me. Not with eyes, just attention, focused, aware. My hands started shaking. Not from cold, from something else, something primal, the part of the brain that knows predators even when it can't see them. I got out of the water and walked back to camp. I didn't run, I don't know why. I just walked normally, like everything was fine. But I was gripping my equipment case so hard, my knuckles were white, and I kept checking behind me every few steps, making sure nothing followed. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the darkness between the trees. How it had depth to it, how it felt aware. I told myself it was just shadow, just a trick of light and tired eyes. But I didn't believe that. I got up around 2 in the morning and went outside for air. The camp was quiet. Everyone else was asleep. The sky was clear, cold, stars everywhere. Beautiful, in a way that felt empty rather than peaceful. I saw lights in the valley, small ones, moving slowly across the ridgeline about 3 kilometers away. 6 or 7 of them, maybe more. They moved in patterns that didn't make sense, circling back on themselves, splitting apart and rejoining. Too coordinated to be random, too strange to be human. I watched them for maybe 5 minutes. They moved along the ridge, dipped below it, reappeared further east. Then they disappeared behind the far ridge and didn't come back. I went back inside and checked the radio logs. No other teams, no permits issued for that sector. No aircraft scheduled, no explanation. I didn't mention it to anyone, wasn't sure what I'd say. That I saw lights? So what? Could be anything, except I couldn't think of what that anything was. The next day, Robert told me they were moving my work site. Said the readings I'd been getting were inconsistent and they wanted me closer to base. I knew that wasn't true. My readings were fine, consistent, well within normal parameters, but I didn't argue. My new site was 15 kilometers in the opposite direction. Safer terrain, he said, more accessible, better mineral deposits. I worked there for 4 days without incident. The work was boring, predictable, normal. I started to relax. Started to think the previous site had just been my imagination. Stress, too much time alone. On the 5th day, I found the second photograph. It was just lying on the ground near my equipment case. Not in a folder, not protected, just there, on the dirt, like someone had dropped it. Same style as the first one. Black and white, old. This one showed a campsite, a tent, some gear, a fire pit, mountains in the background, and at the edge of the frame, barely visible, something standing, too tall for a person, wrong proportions. The arms too long, the head too small or too large. Hard to tell because the photo was damaged, like something had tried to scratch it out. Deep gouges across that section of the image. There was no writing on this one. But I knew immediately it was from the same place as the first photo. I could see the same mountains in the background, the same valley, the same camp that Willie and Frank had used before. I brought it back to camp. Robert wasn't there. Nobody was. I checked the schedule. Everyone was supposed to be on site. Different locations, but on site. I radioed. No response. I tried all frequencies. Nothing but static. I waited 30 minutes, then an hour. The camp felt wrong. Too quiet. Too still. I kept checking the tree line, kept expecting to see movement, that darkness, but there was nothing. Just trees and rocks and empty space. They came back just before dark. All 5 of them. Robert looked exhausted, pale. One of the other researchers, Katie, had a cut on her forehead. Dried blood down the side of her face. Nobody was talking. I asked what happened. Robert looked at me like he'd forgotten I was there. Took him a moment to focus. Equipment malfunction, he said. Had to retrieve gear from an old cache near the valley entrance. That didn't make sense. We had spare equipment here. No reason to go to the valley. But nobody was elaborating. Katie went straight to her cabin. The others followed. Nobody made dinner. Nobody talked. I showed Robert the photograph later that night. He took it and stared at it for a long time. His hands were shaking slightly. I could see it in the way the photo trembled. "Where did you find this?" he asked. I told him. "At my work site, just lying there." He asked if anyone else had been there. I said no. I'd been alone all day. He looked at the photo again, specifically at the thing at the edge of the frame, the scratched-out figure. "We're packing up tomorrow," he said. "Surveys done early." I asked why. He said the funding had been cut, that the company needed us back. I knew that wasn't true. We still had 3 weeks left on the contract. We'd barely covered half the planned survey area. But I didn't argue. Something in his face told me not to push. That night I heard the sound again, that low mechanical pulse. It was coming from outside the cabin, low, steady. I got up and looked out the window. Nothing there, just darkness and trees. But the sound continued. I realized it was coming from underneath the building, directly below my room, rising up through the floorboards, vibrating through the walls, not loud, just persistent, present, like the building was sitting on top of something that was breathing. I didn't go outside. I sat on my bunk and listened. After about 20 minutes, it stopped. Silence. Then I heard something else. Footsteps on the roof, slow, deliberate, heavy, moving from one end of the building to the other, then back, then stopping directly above my room. I didn't move, barely breathed, just listened. The weight shifted. I could hear it, could feel it through the ceiling. Something large, something patient, something waiting. After maybe 5 minutes, it moved again, walked back across the roof, then silence. In the morning, Robert and I checked the roof. He didn't ask why, just got the ladder. We climbed up together. No tracks, no disturbance in the dust, no marks in the frost, nothing. But when we climbed down, I noticed something. The ground around the entire cabin had been swept clean. Not by wind. The pattern was wrong, circular, deliberate, like something had dragged itself around the perimeter multiple times, creating concentric rings in the dirt. Robert saw it too. He didn't say anything, just looked at it. Then looked at the tree line, then back at me. "Pack your things," he said. We left that afternoon, packed everything in 6 hours, and drove out. Nobody talked during the drive. Katie kept looking out the window at the valley. Her eyes were red. Hadn't seen her sleep. About an hour in, she said something I still think about. "It's watching us leave," she said. Robert told her to stop, but I looked back at the valley and I saw the lights again, dozens of them now. Not 6 or 7, dozens, moving along the ridgeline, following the road, keeping pace with us. We drove faster after that. I never went back. The survey was officially listed as completed. Full report submitted. I got paid for the entire contract. 6 months later, I tried to look up the research station. Couldn't find any record of it. No permits, no lease agreements, no documentation, like it never existed. I called Robert. His number was disconnected. Tried to find him through the company. They said they had no record of anyone by that name working for them. I checked with 2 other researchers from the team. Same thing, numbers disconnected, no forwarding information. Gone. I still have the second photograph. I keep it in a drawer in my apartment. Sometimes I take it out and look at the thing standing at the edge of the frame, the thing someone tried to scratch out. I've tried to convince myself it's a tree or a rock formation or a trick of old film grain, but I know what it is. And I know it's still there. In the valley, waiting. I transferred to an office position after that. Desk work, data analysis. No more field surveys. People ask why. I tell them I wanted a change. Better hours, more stability. That's all true, but it's not the real reason. The real reason is that sometimes when I'm working late and the building gets quiet, I hear that sound again. That low mechanical pulse, rising up through the floor, and I remember the darkness between the trees, how it had depth to it, how it watched. I tell myself it stayed in the valley, that it can't follow, that I'm safe here in the city with lights and people and concrete. But sometimes I'm not sure that's true. Sometimes I think the valley doesn't let things go that easily. That once you've seen what's there, once you've heard it and felt it watching, you carry a piece of it with you. Permanent, marked. I don't tell people about Nahanni anymore. Don't talk about what I saw or heard. Don't mention the photographs or the lights or the thing on the roof. Because the more I think about it, the more I realize something. The valley didn't keep Willie and Frank and all those others. The valley is still keeping them, and I think it tried to keep us too. I don't tell people about Falcon Lake anymore. I did at first when it happened, but after a while I realized how it sounded, so now I just say I had an accident. That usually ends the conversation. It was May 2017. Long weekend. I was doing amateur prospecting near the Ontario-Manitoba border, looking for quartz deposits. I'd done it before. It's not exciting work. You walk, you look at rocks, you take samples. Most people would find it boring. I found it peaceful. The area near Falcon Lake is quiet. Rocky terrain, some forest, not many people. I'd camped there 3 times before without issue. That morning was clear, good visibility. Temperature around 15 degrees. I remember thinking it was perfect weather for being outside. I was examining a quartz vein around noon when I heard something, not loud, just unusual. A low humming sound, like industrial equipment, except there was no equipment nearby, no roads, no buildings, nothing. I looked up. There was something hovering about 100 meters away. I don't know what else to call it. It wasn't a helicopter. Too stable. No rotor wash, no vibration. The sound was wrong. Smooth. Continuous. Like machinery, but not quite. It was metallic, reflecting light in a way that hurt to look at directly. The surface seemed to shift. Not moving, just the reflection changing. Like polished steel, but more. I watched it for maybe 2 minutes. It just hovered there. Perfectly still, except for that humming. Then it started descending. Slowly. Controlled. It came down onto a rocky outcrop about 50 meters away and settled. The humming changed pitch. Got quieter. Almost subsonic. I could feel it in my chest more than hear it. I stood there trying to understand what I was seeing. My first thought was military aircraft. Experimental. That made sense. There are test ranges up here, but it didn't look like any aircraft I'd ever seen. No wings, no visible propulsion, no markings. I walked closer. I don't know why. Curiosity maybe, or just the need to understand. When I got within maybe 30 meters, I saw an opening, like a door had slid open. There was light inside, bright but not harsh. Different colors, moving across surfaces in patterns that seemed deliberate. I called out, asked if anyone needed help, thought maybe it was some kind of emergency landing. No response. I called again, nothing. Just that humming and the light. I got close enough to see inside. There were panels, intricate. Geometric patterns covering every surface. Lights moving across them in sequences I couldn't follow. It looked like a control room, but nothing was labeled. Nothing had switches or buttons or displays, just smooth surfaces and light moving in patterns. The opening was maybe 2 meters across. I could smell something, not burning, chemical, sharp, like ozone mixed with something metallic. The air felt different near it, thicker somehow. I reached out to touch the edge of the opening. The surface was hot, not burning, just very warm, like touching a car hood in summer. My gloves started to melt. I pulled my hand back and looked at it. The fingertips were gone, just melted away. The material underneath was bubbled. That's when it rotated. The whole thing, smooth, silent. No sound except that continuous humming. A panel moved in front of me. It had holes in it. Small ones. Maybe 100 of them arranged in a perfect grid, each hole about the size of a pen tip, precisely spaced. Something shot out, air or gas or something, hot, incredibly hot. It hit my chest and stomach directly. I felt my shirt ignite immediately. The smell was overwhelming. Burning fabric, burning skin, burning something else I couldn't identify. Chemical. Wrong. I ripped the shirt off, threw it on the ground, tore at my undershirt. The thing lifted off while I was doing this. Just rose straight up. Fast. Faster than anything that size should move. No sound now except wind displacement. Then it was gone. Just sky. Empty sky. I looked down at my chest. The burns were already forming. Small circular marks. dozens of them, arranged in the same grid pattern as the holes, each one about the size of a dime. Perfect circles. Identical spacing. The pain hadn't fully registered yet, just heat. Intense heat radiating outward. I stumbled back to my camp. My hands were shaking, not from fear, from something else, something physical, like my body was rejecting something. I got the first aid kit, put burn gel on the marks. They were already blistering, raised, angry red, precise. The nausea started about 20 minutes later. Heavy, overwhelming. I vomited 3 times before I got to my truck. My hands kept shaking. I tried to think clearly, tried to make sense of it. I couldn't. Nothing made sense. I drove to the nearest hospital. Kenora, about an hour away. I remember the drive being difficult. I kept losing focus. The road would blur. I'd blink and I'd be further along than I should be. Missing time. Minutes disappearing. The burns hurt worse as I drove. Sharp, stabbing, like they were getting deeper. Burrowing. The pain was different from normal burns. More intense. More wrong. The emergency room doctor looked at them for a long time. Didn't say anything at first. Just examined them. Measured the spacing. Photographed them. Asked what happened. I told him the truth. He didn't say anything. Just documented the burns and gave me pain medication. He asked if I'd been exposed to any chemicals. I said I didn't know. He asked if I'd been near any industrial sites. I said no. Just forest. Just rocks. He sent me home with cream and antibiotics. Said to come back if they got worse. Didn't offer any explanation. Didn't suggest what might have caused them. Just treated them and sent me home. The burns got worse over the next week. The circular marks raised into welts. Hard. Geometric. Precise. They didn't heal like normal burns. Normal burns blister, weep, scab, fade. These stayed raised. Stayed precise. The grid pattern remained perfect. I went back to the hospital twice. Different doctors, same questions. No answers. One of them asked if I'd been near industrial equipment. I said no. Another asked about radiation exposure. I said I didn't think so. Nobody could explain the pattern. Nobody could explain why they weren't healing normally. The spacing was too precise, too deliberate. Burns don't form in perfect grids. They spread. They're chaotic. These were organized, identical, like they'd been stamped on. 3 weeks later, the headaches started. Not regular headaches. Deep, behind my eyes. Pressure building, like something was expanding inside my skull. They'd come suddenly and last for hours. Sometimes I'd black out, just lose time. I'd come to somewhere else. Once in my truck, parked on the side of the highway, no memory of driving there. Another time in my kitchen at 3 a.m, no memory of getting up. The missing time frightened me more than the burns. I tried to go back to the site, find evidence, something, anything. But when I got there, the area looked different. The rocks where it had landed looked burned, but in a way that could have been natural. Lightning strike, maybe. Or chemical spill. The vegetation nearby was dead in a perfect circle, about 4 meters across, perfectly circular. I took samples, soil, dead plants, sent them to a lab, cost me $200. They came back showing elevated radiation. Not dangerous levels, they said, just higher than normal background radiation. The report said it was consistent with natural uranium deposits, but there were no uranium deposits in that area. I'd surveyed it before. I'd taken readings, nothing unusual, just granite and quartz and normal soil. No uranium, no explanation for the radiation. The RCMP came to my house in July, 2 officers, plain clothes. They asked about Falcon Lake, about what I'd seen. I told them everything. They took notes, asked for my clothing. I'd kept the burned shirt, gave it to them. They said they'd be in touch. I never heard from them again. I called the detachment twice. Left messages. Nobody called back. I went in person once. They said the case was closed. No further investigation needed. I asked what they'd found. They said they couldn't discuss it. I asked if they'd analyzed the shirt. They said yes. I asked what the results were. They said they couldn't discuss it. The burns faded over time, but they didn't disappear. Even now, 6 years later, I can see them. Faint. Light circles on my chest and stomach. The grid pattern is still there. Perfect spacing. Identical size. When it's cold, they show up more clearly. Like the skin remembers. The headaches never stopped. They're less frequent now. Maybe once a month. But when they come, they're the same. That deep pressure. That feeling of something wrong inside my head. And sometimes the missing time. Hours I can't account for. I tried to research it. Found other cases. Not many. But enough. People reporting similar things. Burns. Missing time. Health issues that doctors couldn't explain. Most of them stopped talking about it eventually. The same way I did. Because nobody believes you. And after a while, you start to wonder if you believe yourself. You start looking for rational explanations. Heat from something. Chemical exposure from something. Radiation from something. Except nothing fits. Nothing explains the grid pattern. Nothing explains the missing time. I still prospect sometimes. Different areas. Never near Falcon Lake. I tell people I got burned in a camping accident. Propane tank malfunction. That sounds reasonable. That makes sense. People nod and move on. But sometimes when I'm alone and it's quiet, I remember that sound. That humming. And I remember the light inside, the patterns, the way everything moved without anyone touching it, the way it rotated, the way it left. I don't know what it was. Military doesn't explain it. They don't have technology that moves like that, that hovers like that, that leaves burns in perfect grids. And if they did, they wouldn't test it 50 kilometers from a populated area during a long weekend. I kept the lab report, the one showing radiation. I have it in a folder with the hospital records and the photos of the burns taken days after it happened, just to prove to myself that something happened, that I'm not crazy, that it was real, even if I'm the only one who believes it. The marks are still there, faint but visible, perfect circles, perfect spacing, a grid stamped onto my body by something I can't explain, something that shouldn't exist, something that does, and sometimes I wonder if it's still out there. Near Falcon Lake, waiting, watching, coming back. I don't go near there anymore, haven't in 6 years, won't ever again, because whatever it was, it marked me, permanently, and I think that was intentional. I just don't know why. My brother went missing in Whistler in July 2002. His name was Brian. He was 35. Smart, experienced hiker. The kind of person who checks weather forecasts and brings extra water. The kind who doesn't make stupid mistakes. They never found him. I was in Montreal when it happened. Got a call from the RCMP on July 17th. They said Brian hadn't returned from a hike, that the youth hostel where he was staying had reported him missing. They asked if I had heard from him. I said no. Last time we'd talked was 3 days before he left for British Columbia. He'd sounded fine, excited about the trip. I flew out the next day. My other brother, John, came with me. We met with the RCMP in Whistler. Small detachment, 2 officers assigned to the case. They showed us the last known information. Brian had checked into the Shoestring Lodge on July 11th, told staff he was going hiking. Left on the morning of July 12th, around 10:30. Asked the front desk for directions to the Valley Trail, never came back. The Valley Trail is paved. It runs through town. Families use it. People walk dogs on it. Kids ride bikes. It's not dangerous. It's not remote. You can see houses from most of it. The RCMP said they'd searched it thoroughly, walked the entire length. No sign of Brian. No trace. Nothing. We started asking around town, showed people his photo. A bus driver remembered him, said Brian had been on his tour from Vancouver. That Brian had asked about mountain trails during the ride, specifically mentioned Rainbow Mountain. Said Brian seemed knowledgeable, talked about hiking experience, asked good questions, seemed prepared. The RCMP searched Rainbow Mountain. It's a harder trail, 9 hours round trip. Elevation gain around 1,400 meters. Steep sections, technical in places. They sent teams up, searched for 3 days, found nothing, no equipment, No clothing, no signs anyone had been there recently. Weather had been good on July 12th when Brian left. Clear, warm, good visibility. But that night, heavy rain moved in, fog, poor visibility, temperatures dropped. It stayed that way for days. The RCMP said conditions made searching difficult, that if Brian was out there, exposure would have been a factor. We stayed in Whistler for 2 weeks, walked the trails ourselves, put up posters, talked to locals, shop owners, trail guides, park rangers. Everyone was helpful. Everyone was sorry. Nobody had seen Brian after he left the lodge that morning. One woman who worked at the outdoor equipment store remembered him, said he'd come in on July 9th, asked about trails, bought nothing, just looked around and asked questions. She said he seemed experienced, knew what he was talking about, knew what gear he needed. She remembered thinking he'd be fine. We checked with the lodge multiple times, asked what Brian had taken with him. They said he'd left most of his belongings in his room, took a small day pack, some water, snacks, his camera, not enough for an overnight trip, just a day hike. His rental car was still in the parking lot, untouched, keys in his room, wallet in his room, phone in his room. Everything except what he'd taken for the hike, like he'd planned to come back that afternoon and continue his vacation. The search was called off on July 21st. The RCMP said conditions made further searching ineffective, that they'd covered the likely areas, that if Brian was out there, they would have found something by now. Some trace, some evidence. They said the case would remain open, that they'd follow up on any new information, that if anyone found anything, they'd investigate. But the active search was over. John and I didn't want to leave. But eventually we had to. Jobs, lives, responsibilities. We couldn't stay forever. We flew home in early August. Left posters up around town, left contact information with local businesses, asked people to call if they saw anything, if they heard anything. Nobody ever called. For months afterward, I tried to understand what happened. Brian was careful. He knew mountains. He'd hiked all over Quebec and Ontario, Adirondacks, White Mountains. He carried proper gear. He checked conditions. He researched trails before hiking them. He told people where he was going, but the details didn't add up. If he went to Rainbow Mountain, why did he ask about the Valley Trail that morning? If he went to the Valley Trail, where did he go after? The town isn't that big. Someone should have seen him. The trail is visible from roads and houses. He should have been noticed. And why take so little gear? He was an experienced hiker. He knew better than to go into serious terrain with just a day pack and water. It didn't match his personality, didn't match his experience level. I started researching Whistler disappearances, found more cases, lots of them, more than seemed normal for a recreational area. People vanishing in good weather. Experienced hikers, missing without trace. The numbers were strange, disproportionate, higher than similar areas with similar terrain and similar visitor numbers. In September 2010, 2 more people disappeared near Whistler. Couple in their 20s, Rachel Bagnall and Jonathan Jett. Last seen hiking near Pemberton. Experienced, prepared, never found. Extensive search, no results. In June 2011, another man, Darcy Brian Turner, 42 years old, experienced outdoorsman, went on a vision quest in Stein River Valley, told people exactly where he'd be. Never came back. Search teams found his campsite, found his gear, never found him. In 2015, 2 women from the same street, Ashley Simpson, disappeared in May while hiking. Deanna Wirtz disappeared in July while hiking behind her property. They lived 2 doors apart, both experienced, both prepared, both gone without trace. I started keeping a file, names, dates, locations, circumstances, ages, experience levels, weather conditions, search efforts. I wanted to see if there was a pattern, something the RCMP might have missed. Something that would explain Brian. Patterns emerged. Most were experienced outdoorsmen. Most disappeared in good conditions. Most left some kind of trace except the people themselves. Gear found, cars found, campsites found, but no bodies, no remains, nothing that explained where they went or what happened. I contacted other families, found them through news articles and missing person databases, compared notes. Everyone had the same questions. Everyone got the same answers from authorities. Extensive searches. No evidence of foul play. Likely got disoriented. Likely succumbed to elements. Case remains open. Will contact you if anything develops. Nothing ever developed. Not for any of us. I went back to Whistler in 2015, 13 years after Brian disappeared. Walked the trails he might have taken. Talked to people who'd been there in 2002. Most didn't remember. A few did. One woman said she remembered that week, said the weather had been strange, clear one moment, fog the next. She'd been hiking near Cheakamus Lake. Said she'd gotten turned around on a trail she'd hiked dozens of times. Took her 2 hours to find her way back. She said it felt wrong somehow. The trail looked different. The landmarks were off. She couldn't explain it better than that. A park ranger I spoke with had been working there since 1998. He remembered Brian's case, said it wasn't unusual that people disappeared in the area regularly, more than they should. He said the terrain was deceptive, that trails that looked easy could become dangerous quickly, that weather changed fast, that people made mistakes. But he also said something else. He said some areas felt different, that experienced rangers avoided certain sections, that there were spots where compasses acted strange, where people reported feeling watched, where search dogs refused to go. He wouldn't tell me which areas, said it would cause panic. Said people would read too much into it, but he said it was real, that everyone who worked there long enough noticed it. They just didn't talk about it publicly. I hiked Rainbow Mountain that trip. Took me 8 hours, longer than expected. The trail wasn't well marked in places. Easy to miss turnoffs, easy to get disoriented even with a map, but not impossible. And Brian was experienced. He wouldn't have gotten lost on a marked trail in good weather. At the summit, I looked out over the valley, tried to imagine what Brian had seen if he'd made it that far. If he'd seen something, heard something, gone off trail for some reason, maybe to get a better photo, maybe to investigate something unusual. The view was beautiful, stunning, the kind of place that makes you feel small, but also exposed, vulnerable, like you're being watched from every direction. I stayed at the summit for 30 minutes. The feeling didn't go away. On the way down, I passed 3 other hikers, asked if they came here often. They said yes. Asked if they'd ever experienced anything unusual. They looked at each other. One of them said sometimes people heard things, voices calling from off-trail, movement in the trees that didn't match wildlife. Most people ignored it, kept hiking, stayed on the trail. I asked what happened if you didn't ignore it, if you went to investigate. They said they didn't know, said they'd never been curious enough to find out. But they knew people who had, people who'd gone off trail and gotten lost, taken hours to find their way back. Some never did. Over the years, I've talked to dozens of park rangers, search and rescue volunteers, locals who've lived there for decades. Everyone says the same thing. The mountains are dangerous. People underestimate conditions. Accidents happen. But everyone also admits the number of disappearances is unusual, that Whistler has more missing persons cases than similar areas, that the patterns are strange, that some cases don't make sense no matter how you analyze them. Some people have theories, wildlife attacks, hidden mine shafts, criminal activity, cult abductions, serial killers. I've heard them all. I don't know what to believe anymore. None of them explain why so many experienced people vanish without any trace, why searches find nothing, why bodies never turn up even years later. Last year, I found a support group online, families of people who disappeared in British Columbia wilderness. There are dozens of us, maybe hundreds. We share information, compare cases, look for patterns, support each other. One woman's son disappeared in 2008, 23 years old, experienced climber. She goes back every year, walks the trails, leaves markers, hopes someone will find something. She says she can't stop, that not knowing is worse than knowing, that she needs to believe he's still out there somewhere, that maybe he's alive, that maybe he'll come back. I understand that feeling, the hope, the denial, but I don't share it anymore. Brian's been gone 21 years. If he were alive, he would have contacted us. He would have come home. Whatever happened to him happened that day, July 12, 2002. I still have his last voicemail. Left it 3 days before he disappeared. He's talking about the trip. Says he's excited. Says he's looking forward to seeing the mountains. Says he'll call when he gets back. His voice sounds normal, happy. No indication anything is wrong. I've listened to it maybe 1,000 times, trying to hear something I missed, some clue, some warning, some hint that something was wrong. There's nothing there. Just my brother's voice, planning a trip he never came back from. The RCMP still lists his case as open, missing person, last seen July 12, 2002, Whistler, British Columbia. But nobody's actively looking anymore. Too much time has passed, too many other cases, not enough resources. The file sits somewhere gathering dust. I think about Brian every day, wonder what happened, wonder if he suffered. Hope he didn't. Hope it was quick, whatever it was. I try to convince myself he's dead, that he died that day in those mountains, that his body is out there somewhere hidden, covered by growth or buried by time, that eventually someone will find something, a bone, a piece of clothing, something that brings closure. But there's a part of me that isn't sure, a part that wonders if something else happened. Something the RCMP doesn't want to acknowledge, something that doesn't fit normal explanations. Because Brian was too careful, too experienced, and he's not alone. Too many others, too many similar circumstances, too many unanswered questions. The mountains took him, that much I know. But how and why remain mysteries. Mysteries that keep me awake some nights, that make me avoid hiking, that make me look at wilderness differently now. Brian went into those mountains and never came out. And somewhere in Whistler, whatever took him is still there, waiting. My great-grandfather knew Swift Runner, not well, but they crossed paths at Fort Saskatchewan in the winter of 1878. He never talked about it much, said some things were better left alone. But before he died, he told me the story, said I should know. That forgetting was dangerous. Swift Runner was Cree, worked as a guide and trader. Everyone said he was capable. Good woodsman, respected. Family man, 6 children, wife. The kind of person you'd want with you in the bush. The kind who knows the land, knows how to survive. That winter was bad. Game was scarce. Temperatures dropped hard and stayed there. A lot of families were struggling. Starvation was a real concern across the prairies. But the Hudson's Bay Company post at Fort Saskatchewan had emergency supplies. Food, medicine, help. 25 miles away. Easy distance for someone like Swift Runner. A day's travel, less if you pushed. He took his family into the bush anyway, built a camp. Set up for winter. People thought it was strange. Why go so far when you could stay near help, when supplies were available? But Swift Runner said he knew good hunting spots, said they'd be fine, said he'd provide. Nobody questioned it. He was experienced, capable. If anyone could make it through a hard winter, it was him. They weren't fine. His eldest son died first, midwinter. People thought it was starvation or exposure. These things happened. Winter was cruel. Children were vulnerable. It was tragic but not unusual. But then something changed, something in Swift Runner. The Cree who knew him said they could see it. When he came to the post for supplies that one time, said his eyes went wrong. Empty, like looking at someone through a window but nobody's home. Said he moved differently, talked differently, said he stopped being himself. He didn't come back to the post after that, didn't seek help, and didn't ask for food. Just disappeared back into the bush with what little he'd taken. People assumed the family had moved on, gone somewhere else. Nobody thought to check. He killed his wife in February, then his 5 remaining children, one by one over the course of weeks. But here's what the authorities couldn't understand later. What made even hardened RCMP officers uncomfortable. He didn't kill them because he was starving, didn't kill them for survival, didn't kill them out of mercy to spare them suffering. He killed them because he was hungry in a way food couldn't satisfy, because something else was driving him. Something insatiable, something that demanded human flesh specifically, and after he killed them, he consumed them, not quickly, not out of desperation, methodically, over time. While the Hudson's Bay post sat 25 miles away with emergency food supplies, while help was available, while salvation was within reach, he never tried to get there, never sought help, never attempted to save his family. He just stayed at that camp and fed the hunger. When the authorities found him in spring, he was alone, still at the campsite, surrounded by evidence. Bones, remains, tools. The site told a story that made grown men sick. This wasn't survival cannibalism. This was something else, something systematic, something wrong. He confessed immediately, showed them everything, explained in detail what he'd done, how he'd done it, when, the order. He showed no attempt to hide it, no shame, no guilt, just factual recounting, like describing a hunting trip, but his explanation chilled everyone who heard it. He said a Wendigo spirit had entered him, that it came in the long winter nights, that it spoke in his dreams, that it filled him with an unnatural hunger, that human flesh became not just acceptable, but necessary, essential, the only thing that could satisfy. He described a transformation, a feeling that something else had taken control. That ice had replaced his heart. That his thoughts weren't entirely his own anymore. That he watched himself do these things and couldn't stop. Didn't want to stop. The Cree understood immediately. They'd seen it before. Wendigo possession. It was real. Not metaphor. Not folklore. Real. A spiritual sickness that transformed people into cannibals. That gave them an endless hunger. That trapped their consciousness inside while something else controlled their actions. Western authorities were skeptical. They labeled it starvation-induced psychosis, dismissal of indigenous beliefs, an excuse for murder. They didn't believe in spirits or possession or transformation. They saw a man who'd killed 6 people and needed a reason, any reason. But the details didn't support their interpretation. The emergency supplies 25 miles away, the methodical nature of the killings, the extended timeline, the lack of any attempt to seek help or save his family, and most disturbing, the Cree witnesses who'd seen him at the post, who said he'd already changed by then, who said they'd recognized the signs. Swift Runner was tried and convicted at Fort Saskatchewan in 1879. The trial was brief. His confession was complete. The evidence was overwhelming. He maintained his story of Wendigo possession throughout, said the spirit had entered him, that he'd tried to fight it, that he'd lost. The court recognized only one truth. He'd murdered 6 people and engaged in cannibalism. The reason didn't matter. The sentence was death. Reports from his imprisonment are strange. Guards said he seemed normal most of the time. Talked with priests, even joked occasionally. But sometimes he'd go quiet, stare at nothing. His eyes would change, go empty. And he'd start talking about the hunger, how it never really left, how it waited. On the day of his execution, he was calm, accepted his fate. Some reports say he seemed relieved, like death was freedom from something worse, like the rope would finally end what he couldn't end himself. He was hanged that same year, became the first person legally executed in Alberta. The Cree who attended said they felt something leave when he died, something cold, something that moved through the crowd, looking, searching. They said it didn't die with him. They said it never does. My great-grandfather witnessed the execution. He was 19, working for the Hudson's Bay Company. He said he'd never forget it, not because of the hanging itself, but because of what happened after. He said the temperature dropped. Suddenly, dramatically, in the middle of summer, he said people's breath became visible. He said something moved through the crowd, not wind, something else, something that made people step back, look around, search for what they were feeling but couldn't see. He said Swift Runner's last words were about the hunger, that it was still there, that it would always be there, that the Wendigo doesn't die, it just waits, finds new hosts, continues. The case became foundational in early psychiatric literature. Wendigo psychosis, they called it. A culture-bound syndrome. They documented other cases. Patterns emerged. All involved indigenous people. All involved winter isolation. All involved cannibalism preceded by reports of spiritual possession. In 1907, Jack Fiddler, an OG Cree chief and medicine man, was arrested with his brother Joseph. They'd strangled a woman they believed was becoming a Wendigo. Fiddler claimed to have killed 14 Wendigos during his lifetime, people who showed the signs, who were transforming, whose families requested intervention before it was too late. The Fiddlers said they could see the change. The emptiness in the eyes, the way people moved, the way they looked at others, like seeing meat instead of people. They said the only way to stop a Wendigo was to kill the host before transformation completed. Jack Fiddler committed suicide before trial, hanged himself in his cell. His brother was convicted but pardoned, though he died in prison before receiving news of the pardon. French Jesuit missionaries documented similar cases as early as 1636. Hudson's Bay Company records throughout the 1800s describe multiple incidents. Indigenous people killed by their communities after showing signs of Wendigo possession, family members requesting help to kill loved ones before they transformed completely. Modern psychiatry doesn't recognize Wendigo psychosis anymore. Cultural interpretation of severe mental illness, they say. Psychotic episodes filtered through cultural beliefs. Schizophrenia, dissociative disorders, things that can be explained, medicated, treated. But the Cree maintain the Wendigo is real, not as a physical creature, not something you can photograph or capture, but as a spiritual force, because spiritual force, an entity that can possess and transform human beings under specific conditions. Isolation, winter, starvation, desperation. These create openings, vulnerabilities, opportunities for something else to enter. I didn't think much about the story until I moved to northern Alberta for work. Forestry survey, winter contract, November through March. Good pay. Remote posting. I'd be alone most days. Walking grid patterns, taking measurements. Standard work. It started in January. Just small things. I feel hungry after eating, not normal hunger. Deep hunger. Gnawing. Like I hadn't eaten in days even though I'd just finished a full meal. I'd eat more. The feeling wouldn't go away, would just sit there, present, demanding. Then the dreams started. Not nightmares exactly, just hunger, overwhelming hunger. I'd wake up thinking about food, about meat specifically, about the texture, the taste, the satisfaction, raw meat. The thought should have disgusted me. It didn't. I told myself it was just winter, just being alone too much, just my body needing more calories in the cold. The isolation getting to me, normal responses to abnormal conditions, rational explanations. I'm not superstitious. I don't believe in spirits or possession or transformation, but the hunger got worse. I started thinking about it constantly, during work, during meals, during sleep, all the time. This deep, aching need, and food started to look wrong, insufficient, like I needed something else, something specific, something I couldn't name but recognized instinctively. I'd see animals while working, deer, rabbits, birds, and I'd think about them differently. Not as wildlife, as food, but more than that, as solution, as answer to the hunger, raw, immediate. The thoughts came unbidden, automatic, natural. I called my supervisor in February, said I needed to come in early. He asked if something was wrong. I said no, just wanted a break, needed to see people. He approved it without question, like he understood something I wasn't saying. I drove out the next day, 6-hour drive to Fort McMurray. The hunger stopped as soon as I reached town. Giss! Just gone. Like switching off a light. I felt normal again, confused, embarrassed, but normal. I didn't go back to that site, made excuses, said the work wasn't progressing as planned. Got reassigned to a different area, closer to town, less isolated. My supervisor didn't ask questions, just reassigned me. I think he knew, not the details, but something. The way people who've lived up north their whole lives just know things. I started researching after that. Found other cases. Not many. Most people don't report these things, don't want to sound crazy, but enough. People who worked alone in winter, who reported similar symptoms, unusual hunger, disturbing thoughts, compulsions they couldn't explain. Most of them quit early, came back to town, never went back to remote work. A few didn't. A few stayed out there, and some of those became statistics, missing persons, unexplained deaths. Cases that never quite made sense. In 2003, a trapper near Fort Nelson reported the feelings to RCMP. Said he'd started seeing other trappers differently, not as people, as something else. He walked out of the bush and turned himself in. Said he was afraid of what he might do. They evaluated him, found nothing clinically wrong, released him after 3 weeks, but he never trapped again. In 2011, a hunter near Fort McMurray called emergency services, said something was wrong with him, that he couldn't trust himself around people. Search and rescue found him in his cabin. He'd locked himself inside, hadn't eaten in 5 days, said eating made the hunger worse, made it more specific, more directed. They evacuated him, same thing. Psychiatric evaluation, no diagnosis, released, never went back. The cases are rare enough that nobody connects them. Isolated incidents, mental health crises, stress, cabin fever, malnutrition, rational explanations that satisfy bureaucratic needs. But the pattern is there if you look. Always winter, always northern Alberta or Northwest Territories, always alone, always the same progression. Unusual hunger, disturbing thoughts, fear of losing control, and always the same solution. Return to civilization immediately. I don't work northern contracts anymore. I stay south, stay in populated areas. Tell people it's personal preference, that I like being near towns. That remote work isn't for me. That's all true. But really, I'm afraid of what I felt. That hunger, how real it was, how it didn't feel wrong when it was happening, how it felt natural, necessary, right, how it whispered that satisfaction was close. That the answer was obvious, that all I had to do was stop resisting. I think about Swift Runner often. Wonder if that's how it started for him. Small things, weird appetite, strange thoughts, if he noticed the change, if he tried to fight it. How long he fought before he stopped fighting, before he accepted what he was becoming. The official story says he was insane. That starvation and isolation broke his mind. That Wendigo possession is just cultural interpretation of mental illness. That's the rational explanation, the one that makes sense in modern context. But I remember that hunger, how deep it was, how it came from somewhere I couldn't identify, how it felt separate from me, like something else. Something foreign, something that wanted, something that demanded. And I remember what my great-grandfather said, that the Wendigo doesn't die when the body dies, that it moves, waits, finds new hosts, continues. I don't believe in spirits. I don't believe in possession. But I believe something happens in those northern winters, something that changes people, something that makes them hungry in a way food can't satisfy. And I believe it's still out there, in the empty places, in the cold, in the long, dark nights of winter, waiting for someone to go too far, to stay too long, to be too alone, waiting for someone to let it in. I just hope I never feel it again. I should have heard it sooner, that's what I keep thinking. I was high on a ridge in the Alberta Rockies, watching a bighorn ram through binoculars, and I should have heard the cub before I saw it. But I didn't. One moment I was focused on the ram, tracking its movement across the scree slope. The next, I lowered the binoculars, and there was a small brown shape darting into the brush 10 feet in front of me. My stomach dropped. That immediate cold realization that every outdoorsman in bear country knows. Grizzly cub, which meant the sow was close. I knew exactly what it meant. I'd hiked these mountains for years, guided hunts, knew the protocols, knew the statistics. Mother grizzlies protecting cubs are the most dangerous animals in North America. More dangerous than charging moose. More dangerous than mountain lions. No warning, no hesitation, just immediate violence. I dropped my pack and started digging for my bear spray. It was buried under gear. Wrong place. Stupid. I knew better. Always keep it accessible. That's basic. First thing they teach you. But I'd gotten comfortable. Sloppy. The morning had been quiet. No fresh sign. No tracks. I'd let my guard down. And now I was paying for it. The mother appeared before I found the spray. Just materialized from the trees maybe 20 meters away. Massive. Bigger than I expected. Moving fast. No warning charge. No bluff. She came straight at me. Full speed. Pure aggression. Protecting her cub. Doing what evolution programmed her to do. I threw the pack at her. Didn't think about it. Just reacted. Then I ran for the nearest tree. Spruce, 15 feet away. Might as well have been a mile. I made it to the trunk. Started climbing. Branches tearing at my face and hands. Bark rough under my palms. Not high enough. I knew I wasn't high enough. But there was no time. No more time. She caught me by my right leg. Just behind the knee. I remember seeing her, looking down, seeing her open mouth, the size of her teeth, how white they were. Then the pressure, crushing pressure, like being in a vice. She pulled me down. I hit the ground hard, knocked the wind out of me. She was on top of me instantly. The weight was incomprehensible, like being under a car. Couldn't breathe, couldn't move, could barely think. Just pressure and heat and the smell of her. Wild, musky, raw. She had my skull in her jaws. I felt the pressure building, knew my skull would crack, could feel it starting to give. The bone flexing. My vision went red at the edges, pain everywhere, sharp, blinding, all-consuming. I punched her face, anywhere I could reach. Did nothing. Punched again. Nothing. The pressure increased. My skull was flexing. Actually flexing. I could feel it. Taste blood filling my mouth. Smell her breath. Earth and meat and something wild. Something that didn't recognize me as human. Just threat. Just problem to be eliminated. I bit her ear. Don't know why. Just desperation. Last resort. Instinct. She flinched. Released my head. The pressure stopped. I could breathe again. Could see. But then she grabbed my right arm, shook it like a dog shaking a toy. I heard bones crack. Felt them grinding, disconnecting. The pain was different now, deeper, structural. Then she dropped the arm and went for my leg. Everything slowed down. That's what people say, and it's true. I watched her mouth open, watched my leg disappear inside it, felt the teeth punch through muscle, through bone, felt the meat in the middle, watched the blood. So much blood, more than seemed possible, dark red, almost black, pooling in the dirt. 10 seconds, maybe less. Felt like hours. Then she was gone, just stopped, backed away, looked at me once, long look, assessing, making sure I wasn't a threat anymore. Then she turned and left with her cub. Disappeared into the trees. The forest went quiet. I lay there for maybe 30 seconds, trying to understand that I was alive, that it was over, that she'd stopped. My brain couldn't process it. Kept expecting her to come back, finish it. But she didn't. Just silence. Just wind and my own breathing. Then the pain arrived. All at once, everywhere. My face was gone. I could feel that. Knew it without seeing. Lips torn off. Could feel air on my teeth, on my gums, scalp loose, hanging. Could feel it moving separately from my skull. Skull fractured. Could feel the breaks, the plates shifting wrong. Right arm broken, multiple places. Could see bone through the tears in my sleeve. White, shocking against the red. Ribs broken, couldn't breathe right. Each breath sharp, stabbing, right ankle shattered. Could see bone there too. Compound fracture, the kind that doesn't heal right. Left hand mangled. Missing a finger. Couldn't remember losing it. Couldn't remember her taking it. Just gone. I had two options. Lie there and die, or move. I moved. Don't remember deciding, just started moving, crawling at first. dragging myself with my left arm, right arm useless, hanging wrong, legs screaming, leaving a trail of blood. Too much blood. Knew I was losing too much. Knew I didn't have long. Got to my feet somehow. Don't know how. Shouldn't have been possible with that ankle. But adrenaline does things, makes impossible possible. For a while, I walked, hobbled, fell, got up, walked again. No idea where I was going, just away from where it happened, toward something, anything. The pain was constant now, not sharp anymore, just present. Heavy, like carrying weight, like drowning in it. My vision kept blurring, narrowing. I'd blink and I'd be further along, missing time, missing distance, just gaps. I remember water, crossing a stream, cold, shocking, the current pulling at me. Nearly went down, caught myself, kept moving. Remember thinking the water looked red, realized it was my blood. Diluting, spreading, disappearing downstream. I found a lodge eventually. Don't know how, don't remember the approach. Just remember a door, wooden, close. I got to it, knocked, or tried to. Hand wasn't working right. Might have just fallen against it, a child answered. Boy, maybe 9 or 10. His face changed when he saw me. Went white, eyes wide. He didn't scream, just stared, then turned and yelled for his grandmother, for help, for someone. Faces after that, voices. Someone's grandmother taking charge, calm, capable, asking questions I couldn't answer. Someone else on a radio, talking fast. Medical terms, coordinates, helicopter. They had a heliport behind the lodge, private, for emergencies. Disqualified. I remember being walked there, supported, remember thinking I should walk myself, should be stronger, but I couldn't. Needed help, accepted it. The helicopter came fast, landed in a clearing. Rotor wash throwing dirt, making noise. People in uniforms, paramedics, they moved efficiently, strapped me down, started IBs, put oxygen on my face, talked to each other in code I didn't understand. I remember trying to get my fishing rod from my truck, told them I wanted to go fishing, said the stream was perfect. They wouldn't let me. Told me later I said that. I don't remember, just remember wanting something normal. Something that made sense. The emergency room is blurry. Fluorescent lights, too bright. Faces, masks, gloved hands, people moving fast, cutting clothes off, examining, photographing, documenting. Someone asking my name, asking what happened, asking if I could feel things. Yes, too much. Felt everything. Surgery, multiple surgeries. They rebuilt my face, pieced it back together. Skin grafts, bone grafts, metal plates, screws, whatever it took. Put my bones back together. Pins, rods, external fixators, saved my leg. Said I was lucky. Lucky to be alive. Lucky to keep the leg. Lucky the wounds weren't infected. Lucky. That word kept coming up. I didn't feel lucky. The physical recovery took months. Hospital first, then rehab, learning to walk again, physical therapy every day. Painful, exhausting. Learning to use my hand, the fingers didn't work right, never would. Learning to eat. My mouth didn't move correctly anymore. Learning to speak clearly, to form words with lips that weren't there. That had to be reconstructed. The scars are extensive, permanent. My face doesn't look the same. Never will. People stare, try not to, but they do. I see it, the quick glance, the double take, the look away. I've gotten used to it, mostly. But the physical part wasn't the hardest part. The nightmares started in the hospital. The first night after surgery. Vivid, brutal. I'd wake up screaming, thrashing, fighting invisible threats. They had to restrain me. For my own safety, for the staff's safety. I was violent, not on purpose, just reflex. Fight or flight, except there was nowhere to run. I had someone with me constantly after that. 24 hours, someone watching, someone ready. Because if I had a flashback, I'd get violent, swing at people, try to run, try to fight. No conscious control, just panic, pure panic. The PTSD was worse than the injuries, is worse. Present tense, it doesn't go away, doesn't fade. just sits there, waiting, triggered by random things, sudden movements, loud noises, being alone, crowds. Too many stimuli, not enough control. I asked for psychiatric help immediately. That first day, before I left the hospital, told them I needed it, that I could feel it building, the trauma, the fear, the damage that wasn't physical. Asking for help isn't weakness, it's survival, it's recognizing limits, recognizing damage. The therapy helped, still helps. I work with someone who specializes in trauma, who understands PTSD, who knows what it does. We've developed strategies, coping mechanisms, ways to manage triggers, ways to function, but the fear is always there, under the surface. Waiting. Crowds are difficult, too many people, too much movement, can't track everyone, can't predict, can't control. Sudden movements trigger responses, automatic, uncontrollable. Someone moves too fast and my body reacts before my brain can stop it. Loud noises, car backfiring, door slamming. Anything sudden, anything unexpected. Being alone in wilderness is impossible now. Can't do it. The fear is too strong, too immediate. Every sound is threat. Every movement is danger. Can't relax, can't enjoy it. Just constant vigilance. Constant fear. It ruins what I loved. I wrote a book about it. Mauled, Lessons Learned from a Grizzly Bear Attack. Not because I wanted to relive it, didn't want to, had to force myself, but other people needed to know. That survival isn't just physical. That trauma is real, that asking for help is necessary, that you don't just walk away from something like this. A 9-year-old boy who saw me that day wrote about me in a school assignment. His teacher sent it to me. He called me Bear Dude, said I inspired him because I walked on a shattered ankle, because I crawled across rivers, because I survived. He made me sound like a hero. I'm not a hero. I just refuse to die. That's different. That's not bravery. That's just biology, just survival instinct. Just keep moving because stopping means death. Anyone would do it. Most people would. Not special. Just desperate. People ask if I still go outdoors. If I still hike. The answer is yes, but different now. Very different. More careful. Always aware. Never alone. Always with people. Always with bear spray accessible. Always watching. Always listening. The wilderness is beautiful. I won't let fear take that completely. But I can't experience it the same way. That person is gone. I'm not the same person I was before. That person died on that ridge. The person I am now has scars inside and out. Lives with constant awareness. Carries weight that wasn't there before. Sees threats everywhere. Can't relax completely. Can't let guard down. Sometimes I think about those 10 seconds. How fast it happened. How completely it changed everything. How close I came. If she'd shaken my head instead of dropping it. If she'd crushed my skull completely. If I'd been alone in a different area. Where no lodge existed. Where no help was available. The margins were so thin. Life or death determined by seconds. By random chance. By a bear's decision to stop. Nothing I did mattered. Nothing I could control. Just luck. Just circumstance. Just her choice. I don't think about what I did right or wrong anymore. Those questions don't help. Don't change anything. I was in her territory. Got between her and her cub. The rest was inevitable. Predictable. What any grizzly would do. What evolution programmed her to do. What I think about now is how fragile everything is. How quickly things change. How the wilderness doesn't care about experience or preparation or how careful you are. It just is what it is. Indifferent. Powerful. Unforgiving. The wilderness is still there. The bears are still there. And I'm still here. Different. Damaged. Changed. But here. That has to be enough.